Breathe deep. Imagine your legs more limber in Duluth Trading Double Flex Denim. Envision euphorically squatting for that can of suds, bending for your toolbox in a state of bliss, lunging for your laser level on a whole new level. Relax and allow the flex to fill you with ability. Find your inner flex in Double Flex Denim only at Duluth Trading.
Welcome to People Tech, the podcast of the HCM Technology Report. I'm Mark Pfeffer. My guest today is David Blake, co-founder and co-CEO of LearnIn. Its mission, they say, is to help workers navigate the skills gap by partnering with employers to identify and prepare for better fitting roles. We're going to talk about the evolution of learning, skills, and Amelia Earhart on this edition of People Tech. Hey, David, welcome. And can you tell me about LearnIn?
Yeah. So LearnIn was born out of this paradox that we were seeing in the market, which is upskilling is universally ROI positive, and yet we're seeing companies do very little of it. So there's new numbers out kind of every month, but McKinsey's numbers are there's roughly about 100 million Americans who have self-identified as feeling at risk of displacement in their work if they aren't upskilled in 18 months. So that is, about a third of the American workforce. And right now in America, we're upskilling 9 million people. So we're operating at about 1/10 of the equation. And if it's ROI positive, if you can spend $2 and get $5 back on upskilling as a company, as an individual, you should see the market start to kind of arbitrage that away, but we're not. And so we really wanted to dig in and to understand what are the barriers that are keeping organizations and individuals from being able to upskill and to do so at scale. So that was the mission of the organization. We have spent some time now in the market and can talk about the solutions that we've built to address that need.
Okay. Let me start, though, before we get to that, is, I was reading about Degreed and Book Club at the same time. I'm pretty familiar with Degreed, but not Book Club. And I guess the question I've got for them is, what do they do? And how do the three of them work together at all?
Yeah, well, first I'd say to know me is to know, I tell people I'm an education reformer by choice and an entrepreneur by necessity. And so the passion really is about education. And Degreed is the first company that I co-founded. And its mission, we say, is to jailbreak the college degree. But by that, what was meant is when you ask people, tell me about your education, inevitably, almost certainly, they answer relative to college. Oh, I'm a graduated from SMU. Oh, I graduated in economics, or even, oh, I didn't go to college. You ask someone, tell me about your education. That's how they'll answer. And that's absurd. If I were to ask you, Mark, tell me about your health, and you said, oh yeah, Dave, yeah, I ran a marathon 22 years ago. That is an absurd way to answer for your health. And it's not because marathons are absurd, but that is an absurdity, and we all know it, because what you did with your health and what you did with your education 10, 15, 20 years ago is so infinitesimally informing your health or your knowledge, your education today. But we've been conditioned to it. And so that was Degreed's mission. And so what we started to do was to track people's learning, academic, professional, and informal learning, so that they could have a lifetime reflection, a real-time reflection of their education. And corporations started using it so that they could see what their people were learning and who had what skills. In many ways, LearnIn is, the distinction I would give here is, I'll use marathons again. These days, getting on YouTube, there's some incredible resources. Get on there and watch a marathon training video about how to train for your marathon. But we all know that doesn't turn you into a marathon runner. It did make you smarter. you are gaining knowledge, you are able to learn. That's not the same thing as becoming a marathon runner. And that's the distinction I would give between learning and skilling. Is just like actually becoming a marathon runner is a much larger, longer, harder ordeal, of which knowledge is a subcomponent, but so is nutrition, and so is strategy, and so is repetition, and so is just putting in the training and the hours. Upskilling is a bigger, harder problem than learning. Knowledge is a subcomponent of upskilling, but World Economic Forum, their number is, it takes on average 480 hours to learn a new skill. And it costs on average $24,800. It's just a bigger, longer, harder problem. And so, where Degreed was all about organizing the world's learning resources and helping you track those, LearnIn is all about helping you to upskill. And then finally, Book Club. So you can see the relation a bit, Degreed and LearnIn. Book Club in many ways is, it was born out of the desire. I care about education broadly. And both Degreed and LearnIn were very kind of career oriented, helping people in their careers and their skills. But as a country, but also broader globally as a society, as we've continued to devolve into increased nationalism and racism and extremism, and tribalism, and I really came to want to have a positive impact on that equation. And if you step back and understand, what do all those things hold in common? Misinformation and racism and nationalism and political extremism. At some level, they all, what they all have in common is a lack of empathy and some level of ignorance. And it's hard to legislate away ignorance. At some level, the only thing that can overcome ignorance is education. But what kind of education? And that's a very different kind of education, the kind of education that can challenge someone's worldview, and to do so safely enough that they're actually willing to consider it. They're actually willing to change their position. How do you help someone walk a mile in someone's shoes? That's just a very different kind of education. And so when I started thinking about, well, how can I work on that kind of education? It led me to think about, well, one of the best things we've ever invented as humans is the power of great literature and the written word and its ability to move us. So Book Club was born to scale the power of great literature and the conversations that can be sparked by it. And so we've built the platform to be a platform for people to engage around great literature, to engage the author, to lead book clubs by the authors themselves in many cases, and to be able to scale those kind of worldview challenging conversations.
The world's best-known investor and Wall Street expert Warren Buffett once said, "Wall Street is the only place that people ride to in a Rolls-Royce to get advice from those who take the subway." Mr. Buffett's quote is remarkably accurate, but how many people would rather receive advice from him than someone simply guessing? Welcome to Buy, Hold, Sell, your single source for Wall Street knowledge and profitable guidance. Please join me, Todd Schoenberger, and fellow trader Tobin Smith, as well as host Veronica Dudo, for a podcast known to move the needle for investors. Tobin and I are seasoned Wall Street executives with deep investment experience, and we are prepared to share our advice to those who choose to listen. Download Buy, Hold, Sell today on the Evergreen Podcast Network or your favorite podcast channel.
Greetings from Evergreen Podcasts. We're rolling out a listener survey, and we want to hear from you. The information in the survey will help us gather statistics and in turn make our shows more appealing to advertisers. I know most people don't like ads, but this is one of the only ways our shows make money and help keep their lights on. We promise it will only take a few minutes, but the impact on our podcasts will be tremendous. As a token of our appreciation, we'll randomly select one lucky participant each month to win an exclusive merchandise package from Evergreen Podcasts. Head to evergreenpodcast.com/listener-survey to help a show and possibly get some free stuff for doing so. We can't thank you enough for the support. Now back to the show.
Now, there's so much talk about skills today, and it seems to be coming from everywhere. It's coming from, analysts, executives, the skills is a crisis. What are we going to do about it? We have to offer better learning options. So how's that all impacting you? Is it?
Yeah. The half-life of skills has fallen dramatically. So that's true for now kind of all of us. It's almost inescapable, at this point, almost inescapable. So irrespective of your profession or kind of what your formal training was in, just the skill base required to do almost anything is diminishing the half-life of it. And so, yeah, it's relevant to all of us. I think to steal from Thomas Friedman, he makes the argument in the book, Thank You for Being Late, that 2007 was the year at which the rate at which technology was scaling had outpaced the rate at which humanity could adapt. And if you take that kind of framework, that thesis, and I will restate it slightly, which is, 2007 is then roughly the year in which the rate at which technology is scaling has outpaced the rate at which humanity can learn. And that's what's driving this ever widening skills gap. So there's only one country left in the world who is not facing a skills gap, and that's India, because of enough of their population is still rising kind of into the middle class and the rate of educational attainment in India. But otherwise, every single country in the world has a skills gap, and it's growing. And right now we have no expectation, zero, none. There is no expectation that it'll ever close, ever again. It's getting bigger every day. It's getting bigger every week. It's getting bigger every month. It's getting bigger every year, because those lines are diverging. The rate at which technology can scale has outpaced the rate at which humanity can learn. And so there's good news and bad news in that environment. Last thing I'll say, I'll give it back to you. But in that environment, sort of the challenge is it's a diverging world. It's a world in which the haves, the skilled, the educated are able to continue to benefits accrue. And it's a world in which, as the skill gap gets bigger, it's a world in which the haves, the uneducated, the unskilled have less. But the inverse of that, and the good news, sort of the silver lining is that's a context in which the value of skills and the value of education is going up and up and up and up. And so that's the good news, that we're in this environment where it's very ROI positive to educate people. It's very ROI positive to skill people. And so, we've got to mobilize to that, because to be left behind in that skills gap is of dire consequence. And that's true of an individual, that's true of a company, that's true of a country. If you start to fall behind in this skills gap, it's of dire consequence.
So when you're building these products, who are you thinking of? Are you thinking of the end user? Are you thinking about someone who's up the totem pole a bit from them? Or
yeah, really build for the person, the human, the learner. There's a LearnIn's logo is a propeller of an airplane, and that's an ode to Amelia Earhart, who's kind of our company's hero. As you think about the skills gap, it's a great chasm. Who has crossed great chasms, in history, and we chose Amelia Earhart as kind of our inspiration. But she has a quote that I love, which was, my flying was always solo, but the preparation for it wasn't. And there's kind of a truth to that, which is education is kind of a team sport. But the journey, to actually make it on the journey, is you've got to go on that journey. So you really have to meet, the product has to meet the individual, and it has to work at the individual level to sustain someone. To go back to that stat, 480 hours is the average time it takes to develop a new skill, and so that's really, I think, where success is found. How you make a great product is to build for the person who's, going to spend the dozens, if not hundreds of hours, in it.
We talked about skills and, what it's doing in the world. Let me ask about COVID. That's beat up the economy some. It's changed a lot of corporate thinking, as it were. How is it? First, what have you seen, out there? How how it's impacting learning and attitudes toward learning is the first question.
Yeah, I think a lot of interesting ways. It did bring some kind of leverage back to the individual, to the employee, which I think is probably in the rebalancing, very important. One of the things, though, that we've seen is, we're in this the macroeconomic environment, even as it is inflationary, it's and potentially recessionary. We're in a very tight labor market, and a tight labor market actually contributes to inflation. But and what that has contributed to, and behind that, the skills gap is growing. And so what we're seeing is the tolerance for training people is going up. It used to be always just so hard. In the decision between I can hire someone and have them here, 6 weeks from now, or I can train someone and they'll be ready for the, new role 9 months from now. Companies just always, were addicted to the immediacy of hiring, and often very unwilling to kind of have the discipline of actually upskilling. And we're finally starting to see that shift a bit with the labor market being as it is, just so tight. There's just not enough people, and we see it everywhere, from, going out to, get lunch or get a coffee, all the way up to, sort of the top of every industry. So I think that's, over the long arc, I'm very encouraged by that companies are starting to take more seriously and earnestly the work of investing over a long arc in someone's development and doing internal mobility versus just always hiring.
So, it sounds like when companies are talking about skills and the importance of that whole situation, it sounds like you think they mean it.
Yeah, increasingly I actually do. Yeah. Encouraged that way.
David, thank you very much.
Okay. Well, I appreciate your time and the thoughtful questions. And if, anything else comes up, feel free to reach out by email and be quick to respond.
My guest today has been David Blake, co-founder and co-CEO of Learnin. And this has been People Tech, the podcast of the HCM Technology Report. We're a publication of Recruiting Daily. We're also a part of Evergreen Podcasts. To see all of their programs, visit www.evergreenpodcasts.com. And to keep up with HR technology, visit the HCM Technology Report every day. We're the most trusted source of news in the HR tech industry. Find us at www.hcmtechnologyreport.com. I'm Mark Pfeffer.
Do you love news about LinkedIn, Indeed, Google, and just about every other recruitment tech company out there?
Hell yeah. I'm Chad.
I'm Cheese.
We're the Chad and Cheese Podcast.
All the latest recruiting news and insights are on our show,
dripping in snark and attitude.
Subscribe today wherever you listen to your podcasts. We out.
Welcome to Don't Retire, Graduate, the podcast that asks you what you want to be when you grow up so you can graduate into retirement with a purpose and a passion, whether you're 25, 85, or any age in between. Gain actionable financial and mindset tips from your favorite authors, podcasters, and influencers to help you reach that exciting next chapter. Listen now and start building your path to financial freedom and reframing what retirement can mean to you. This is your host, Eric Brotman, reminding you, don't retire, graduate.
This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. It's Cybersecurity Awareness Month, and LifeLock has tips to protect your identity. Use strong passwords, set up multi-factor authentication, report phishing, and update the software on your devices. And for comprehensive identity protection, let LifeLock alert you to suspicious uses of your personal information. LifeLock also fixes identity theft, guaranteed or your money back. Stay smart, safe, and protected with a 30-day free trial at LifeLock.com/podcast. Terms apply.